Welcome back to another episode of Kate and Isaiah Living Large. I'm Isaiah.
And I'm Kate.
And on this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about an article that Caitlin read called ADHD and Weight Gain. And we're going to kind of give our opinions on our non-self-diagnosed ADHD. But before we get into it, what's going on? What's the haps?
You know, not a lot since our last episode. Like, we're a week into the back to school period. We're just joking. We're recording it one way right after the other. We have no idea what's happened in the last week because it's the future. What about you? What's going on?
Clearly, back to school went crazy, and we decided to push school back until the end of September now.
If you're a child listening to this, that is false information.
What do you mean?
If you're my nephew who occasionally tunes in, that is not true, Dominic.
Congratulations, Dominic. Yeah, no, nothing. I mean, I'm hoping that I have gotten to the gym and my back doesn't hurt as much by the end of that week.
I hope so too.
Yeah, me too. Let's jump into it. We got a lot to talk about in this. I got the whole thing with everything on this, but let's start this off. So you found an article.
So I'm going to back this train up, and I've I've mentioned this on this podcast a few weeks ago, and I'm turning into a very typical millennial. And even though I'm an elder millennial, I still fall into the category Isaiah. Mm-hmm. And I have started reading a lot of the symptoms of ADHD and then equating them to myself. And
as we all do.
And I know that that's just like a classic thing that people shouldn't do. And I don't put a ton of stock into it, except that there are some things that, whether it's true or not true, or diagnosed or not diagnosed, that I can take away from it. But I've been reading a lot about how ADHD presents in adult women, or in women generally, versus in men, because for so many years, when somebody mentioned ADHD, all I thought of was that boy who couldn't sit still in school.
Me?
No, you're indifferent to everything. Remember last episode? You just it's not that you couldn't sit still, is that you couldn't stay put. You just went down to St. John High or whatever.
True.
That's a throwback to the last episode. But no, these kids who just cannot sit still, and sometimes are disruptive, but mostly just cannot sit still. And so what I've found out from friends who actually have been diagnosed with ADHD is that's certainly not the only symptom of it, but it's the one that was most pronounced when we were in school. But there are a lot of symptoms of ADHD that wouldn't get picked up on in school because they're not obtrusive. Mm-hmm. That's one that would get those kids some Ritalin because they're disrupting this classroom. But there are a lot of other parts of ADHD that are more like hyper-focused on one task at a time, or easily distracted, or head in the clouds, or, all kinds of different things. And a lot of them can lead to different things, like have a hard time to keep a clean house, me. Have a hard time to get organized, also me. But also can be super high achieving, and so do well in school, and to a point where it causes anxiety sometimes, and do well at jobs because you want to please people all the time. I mean, part of that is people pleasing and not ADHD, but also the ability to focus on those kinds of things can be how it presents in women versus how it presents in men. So I had this brainwave yesterday.
Yes.
And I Googled ADHD obesity. Ooh. And that's it. And lo and behold, doesn't this article come up, because it's Google and it will bring something up for everything you Google. And
sometimes.
And I'm not suggesting that you fall down these traps. And I didn't even go on to try to do further research from the APA, the American Psychological Association, or anybody actually legitimate. But this was on an ADHD specific website. And it said that 70%, research suggests that the prevalence of obesity is around 70% higher in adults with ADHD than those without. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I read the research that they're following off of, and it's a little, the research didn't fully state that in the actual research.
Because correlation isn't causation for one.
There was there was two studies they cited that and I could look them up, but we're not a research podcast, so it doesn't matter. But the two studies they did, one, I noticed that they didn't do enough people. In the study, it looked like they only did like 50 people, which a study does not make. And then the other one did look like 200 people, which can equate to a study.
Yeah.
And both came to the conclusion that it can be perceived that ADHD does in fact affect weight gain. However, they do have a caveat that more research needs to be done to have a conclusion.
Oh, for sure. And like any research in any science, because we're both experts, correlation isn't causation. So just because you have ADHD and you're fat doesn't mean that these two things are related at all. And I recognize that from a scientific perspective. Also, just because I've diagnosed myself with ADHD and I'm fat doesn't mean those things are linked. And I know that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, you idiots, I know. But I thought it was an interesting point of discussion, because you think of some of those things that go along with ADHD listed, like one of them, Isaiah's really done a great job of doing a synopsis of this article and putting them up in key bold points on a sheet on the computer so I can glance over and be like, yes, executive function deficits, kind of like I just mentioned with like inability to keep a clean house. Which makes it challenging to do any of those good weight loss habits, like resisting temptation.
Oh my goodness. I definitely have ADHD, self-diagnosed again, but the resistance to food is a big one.
And which brought me back to a few thoughts. One, I remember vividly when my mom was doing a weight loss thing when I was in elementary school, there were no sweets in my house whatsoever. And I was jonesing real hard for some sugar. And I remember vividly, Mom was out taking like a bag of icing sugar and dumping a quarter of it down my gullet. And I was like, because I was so like focused on getting sugar, I was like, I need sugar right now. And I wasn't even fat then. I was like 9 years old. And I was like, I think back on that time sometimes, and I think like, what is wrong with my brain that made it so apparent? It wasn't just like, oh, there's nothing here, I don't eat it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like, one of the best ways they say to lose weight is to track what you're eating. And there's nothing I hate more than tracking. Which
is one of the points they talk about in the executive function deficit, which is the self-monitoring. The one that really stuck out to me, that I think we both have a problem with, is the long-term health goals. and for me, at least, it's the stocking with healthy food instead of
right.
Yeah, that's another big one I have.
Well, for me, it's stocking with grocery shopping at all. Like I go in and I'm like, oh, everything's so expensive, I don't want to buy anything, but then I'll spend 3 times as much eating out. And like, well, what is wrong with your thought process here? And also like, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's, and this will go to the next bigger point, the like impulsive reward seeking behavior, right? It's you're looking for that dopamine hit, right? Yeah. That's kind of what ADHD kind of is a deficit in dopamine, right?
Right.
At least from my understanding. I'm not, again, not a scientist, but you're always looking for that next dopamine hit of what makes you enjoy. That's why people with ADHD hyper focus for short periods of time. You get really hyper focused and like go all out on one thing, and then you lose that dopamine hit of whatever that was that you enjoyed, and you move to the next thing.
Right. And
so you're always looking for that. So like anytime something like, for instance, if your chocolate has that like extra chemical that makes you feel dopamine, and so that instant gratitude of having something rather than or going out for fast food, that instant gratitude of oh, I can get it now, versus I have to cook the meal and do all this other stuff and spend an hour prepping for the 5-minute meal I'm about to eat.
Right. Even if it's only 20 minutes of prep, it's still like in my mind, it's 7 hours.
Yeah.
And then when I do that, I'm like, I'm so awesome. I made this meal and I'm so great. And I tell everyone, I take pictures of them, like, look, I made my own meal. And it's like, yeah, everybody else does that 7 days a week, Caitlin.
Right.
You're a moron.
Yeah. And so like doing that looking for that instant gratification is the big thing, right?
Yeah.
Especially when and I don't know about you, but for me, I find a lot of times I get doing something and I just want to do it until I'm like, oh shoot, I'm hungry. I need to eat now.
Yeah, because I'm starving and I'm going to pass out.
Right. I get that often.
My brain is off. Like, as much as I try to help it, I wish this wasn't the case. I get worried about not having enough food. I might get worried, even if I'm not hungry in the moment. I'm like worried about what if I get hungry?
Yeah.
Well, what if I do get hungry? There's lots of fat stores there that I can live on. Nobody's going to die if I'm hungry. But it's a weird thing. And I'm like, hey, and I also know that if I have something in the house and I go to bed at night, my brain will wake up and be like, you should go eat that. And then I can't eat and I can't go to sleep until I've consumed whatever it is then. Delicious meal is sitting in the fridge.
And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago that you potentially are diabetic. So being more attentive to what you eat is going to be even more important. I mean, it should be important now, but
no. And
you may have to
I've been
variable it.
I've been pretty cognizant of that in the last few weeks too. So, but in stupid ways, like, well, I can't buy that because it's full of sugar, but instead I'm going to eat this bag of chips.
Yeah, no,
which is also not great. This was the other one that stood out to me. Thank you for bringing this up. Is poor sleep habits.
I have terrible sleep habits.
I have the worst sleep habits, and I try so hard to go to bed on time. Sometimes I used to be when I was in my like full drinking phase, like I'd just be up and I'd be up late and up to like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd pass out, and then I'd wake up at 5:30 and I'd go to the gym, and I was on this like treadmill of a hamster wheel of disaster, really.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. So I didn't do as much research in this one, but I didn't realize poor sleeping habits was a factor in ADHD, but it makes sense because, again, it's looking for a dopamine hit, and going to bed does not normally do that dopamine hit as doing something else.
Right.
So you would rather be doing something than doing the go and lay down and do nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I also can't fall asleep without some kind of sound, like usually like a TV going, or lately it's been an iPad going or whatever.
Yeah.
Which also affects the quality of sleep. And I know this, but I can't stop it because almost every Sunday night I get the Sunday scaries so bad that I end up staying up all night before work on a Monday morning. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And I'm 41 years old. I know it's not good, but I lay there and I'm like, I can't sleep. And I only end up falling asleep when I move out to the couch and sit down, and I sleep in some ungodly, uncomfortable sitting up position.
Yeah. So mine's probably a combination of a few things. I probably have ADHD, again, self-diagnosed. But if Andrea going through the tests for ADHD have taught me anything, I probably have ADHD. and as much as I don't like to admit it, I probably have sleep apnea. So when I go to sleep, I don't actually get a good sleep. So then I'm finding myself just falling asleep randomly wherever I'm at.
Yeah, you should get the sleep apnea test.
Probably.
It's worth it. I've done it. I have a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, I
still can't make it stay on my face, but I keep trying.
Yeah, no, 100%. Then the last thing they kind of brought in was that there are some genetic environment stuff too that are to weight gain, because always. It's
like anything, and it's like anything that you talk about medically or scientifically or psychologically is well, it's a little combo B, a little combination A, a little combination B, and by combination I mean columns. And then we're multifaceted humans.
Yeah, right. So like, yeah, just like, and then the things that like our environment in general, like the easy access we've talked about before, easy access to produced foods is a huge one. Again, the going back to the not the I need to eat immediately and not wanting to spend an hour or whatever to make a thing.
Right.
That 100% feeds into the processed food section part, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It all adds up and it all tracks. And it's funny. My mom is so great because every time I go out, she's like, I made this meal and it only took me this much time. And I bought my vegetables pre-cut, and she's like trying to instruct me. And I get it. Like, cause I'm picking up what she's putting down. And I'm like, thanks for the supper. Bye.
So let's look at these some strategies that they had come up with to try and which are things we've talked about for a million times, but let's take a look. So the first one they talked about was build the habit of a meal plan. So again, if you don't like leftover if you don't like leftovers, bag ingredients for a single instant pot or crock pot meal, which you can make as needed. I don't know how you feel about that.
I find that I would never do that.
I would have a problem with it. I used to be able to do it okay, but yeah, I'm not. It's having. I think the meal planning portion is the hard part.
It's 100% the hard part for me.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what I'm gonna want on a Wednesday.
It's not even that, because when I have something, I'll eat it and I look forward to it. Is that if I make a bunch of portions of something, all of a sudden I want 3 portions of it. If I know I have access to it,
yeah,
I want it. And then if I make like a big pot of chili or something, which I've been known to do, then all of a sudden I eat chili every meal for a week, and then I never want to see chili again.
Yeah, I get that.
And because that's the only thing I have prepped, and I don't want to do more work. Whereas somebody who's smart and like puts it in the freezer and then they can just pull it out willy-nilly, and I'm like, well, good for you, right, Sally.
Yeah, no, I'm like that. Yeah, I get that too. Like, yeah. This one was one that I think I should be doing more of, it just creating a grocery list. I am terrible for that. We just walk in the grocery store and pick stuff up, and do we need this? I don't know. Let's grab it if we need it.
One of the best food prep tips that we got on our podcast, actually, and my sister does it as well, is from your friend.
Which one? Courtney?
Yeah, Courtney. Oh my gosh, why can I never remember? Because she's the best. And what she does, and she talked about this on our podcast, is she'll do like a thing of ground beef and a thing of chicken for the week. Yeah. And then she'll have vegetables chopped. So that can be whatever meal. Like, oh, I feel like this today. There's a meal. Yeah. And then it kind of solves that problem that you were just talking about. Do I do this? No. Even my mom was like, if you just get one of those little chickens from the superstore, that can be whatever you want it to be.
True. Yeah.
Like, thanks.
Yeah. So here's something that, and I'm sure it already exists out there, but I've not found it yet. I wish there was an app, and it's got to be an app, not a website, an app that I can just input what I have in my fridge and in my that.
Why does it have to be an app and not a website?
Because I don't want to go to a computer and do it.
You can use a website on your phone?
Not as easily. It needs to be an app. Someone make an app. It needs to be an app. It needs to be phone friendly, and I don't find websites phone friendly. But I wanted something I can put all my ingredients that I have in, and I can. It will just tell me, here's the different meals that you can make with those ingredients, and not tell me, oh, you need to go buy this thing as well.
Yeah, that does exist. I'm sure
it does somewhere, but I need it because I don't want to have to go and buy something else. I want it just to tell me what I have in. So like, here's what you have, and here's what you can make with that. Because I think that is my biggest problem with cooking. Is I look at everything that I have and I go, I don't know, chicken nuggets and French fries. That's my biggest problem with cooking in general.
Are you a recipe follower?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not. I can throw a bunch of stuff in, like, this will probably taste okay with varying degrees of success, but
I am a terribly like recipe follower. Like Andrea hates it because I'm like, when she makes stuff, she's like, oh, I just put a pinch of this. And I'm like, I don't know what a pinch is. What is the measurement I need to put in this?
Like, you're probably a good baker.
I don't have the patience to bake.
Same.
No, it's not. There's the dough. The dough has to be, and I'm always like ripping dough and stuff. I can't bake.
Okay.
I'm terrible at it. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, I think that's my biggest thing. Then they talk about gradually rewiring your sleeping habits. This one I don't know. So try to stick to a regular sleeping schedule. If you stick to a regular sleeping schedule, I wouldn't have bad sleeping habits.
Right. I mean, the next thing is exercise does help with sleep, because when you exercise, you're tired and you sleep better.
Yeah, but then you just ruin your sleeping habit because you just pass out because you're tired.
No, never mind. You're looking for excuses now.
You are right. What else we got going on here? That's the last of it right there. So last one they have here is implement structure to reduce impulsive choices. So some things that they mentioned that is a good habit, but something that I would struggle with, something like keep unhealthy snacks out of the home. It's easily said to do, but
I do that because I don't buy anything to bring into my home because it's too many flights of stairs.
I think for me, I think the best thing to do is like buy boxes of chips that are the small bags instead of buying one big bag, because I can sit down and just mouth through a giant bag of chips. Yeah. But if I have a small bag of chips, I know it's a little bit more expensive. I can finish that small bag of chips and not want another bag of chips.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't know. That for me, it's like that impulse of just eating. The other one that I thought I don't know, I would have a problem with is not snacking in front of the TV, which makes sense to me. I don't know, that rule makes sense to me, but I would have trouble with that too.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things are good advice for if you're going to follow them, but ultimately, if you eat less and move more.
Yeah, right. Like this, I think these are like the article was interesting. It was an interesting read. It
was an interesting read, and it was an interesting topic to talk about, and to think about what you might have to work against in your own brain, whether it's actual ADHD, self-diagnosed ADHD, or just not wanting to do it. Like, okay, we know that meal prepping works, and we know that regular exercise is good, and we know that sleeping is good. So like, what are the roadblocks that get in the way? Assessing those moving forward. And I mean, and I make it sound simple, but it's not. If it was simple, I wouldn't.
Everyone would do it.
I wouldn't be like this. And if it was all just related to what we eat and how we move.
Yeah.
And no genetics, well, that would be great too. We could all,
right.
But genetics, if we all ate the same thing, we wouldn't all look the same.
This is 100% true. I think it was a good article, and I'll make sure it's in the description. So if anyone wants to go read it, and they did, I will say, do a better job with posting where they cited stuff from, which I did enjoy. Yeah. I do enjoy when people do op-eds and post where they cite the research for.
Yeah,
from.
It seemed like it was academic enough in its delivery that it wasn't. It did say like it wasn't like this definitely is a thing.
Yeah. Yes. So. But it's interesting, and it makes sense that ADHD would contribute to weight gain because again of the things that they talked about in the article, the impulsiveness, the lack of want to go do something that doesn't give you that dopamine hit.
Right.
So it definitely makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I got distracted.
Oh, okay. That
was an ADHD joke.
That might be an ADHD thing right there.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe.
Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Caitlin Dean on Facebook. And really, I don't update much else, if I'm being honest about it. When we're at Kate and Isaiah Living Large on Facebook. What about you, Isaiah?
At Maritime Brews on all of the social medias. And again, you can help us out, get that nice new camera at Buy Me a Coffee, which will be posted in the description and QR code if you're watching the video. as well. If you are listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcast, if you can like, share, subscribe on those, or if you want to come on over to YouTube and check out the video. And if you are listening, watching on YouTube, if you can also like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever it is, all that stuff helps to spread us around. Listen and let people hear us more and put us in all those fun algorithms. But until next week, thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.